all mother sentient beings boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. Quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Then with the Milarepa Guru Yoga text on page 8, which is the refuge in the bodhicitta. I and all migratory beings without exception take refuge until the state of enlightenment in Venerable Shepa Dorje, the embodiment of the excellent three and the three roots. I and all other migratory beings without exception take refuge until the state of enlightenment in Venerable Shepa Dorje, the embodiment of the excellent three and the three roots. I and all migratory beings without exception take refuge until the state of enlightenment in Venerable Shepa Dorje, the embodiment of the excellent three and the three roots. For the sake of mother sentient beings equal to the infinity of space, becoming liberated from the ocean of samsara, I vow to accomplish the supreme state of Shepa Dorje. For the sake of mother sentient beings equal to the infinity of space, becoming liberated from the ocean of samsara, I vow to accomplish the supreme state of Shepa Dorje. For the sake of mother sentient beings equal to the infinity of space, becoming liberated from the ocean of samsara, I vow to accomplish the supreme state of Shepa Dorje. Let's turn to the recitations book, page 73. Page 73. This is the text called Dispelling the Darkness of Ignorance. It's a chant for a recitation for the offering of light or lamps. So today in particular, it's one of the 4 most holy days in the Tibetan Buddhist calendar. It's called Habab Duchen. Habab Duchen commemorates an event said to happen in the life of the Buddha, which is that for 3 months during the life of the Buddha, for a period of 3 months, he was not seen in the human world. And it is believed that he traveled into the celestial realms, where his mother, Mahamaya, had been reborn. So according to the biography of the Buddha, Mahamaya passed away 7 days after Siddhartha was born. And she was born in one of the celestial realms. So then and so when the Siddhartha grew up, cared for by his mother's aunt, which is Mahaprajapati Gautami. So his birth mother passed away on the 7th day after his birth. But it is said that Mahamaya, had been Siddhartha's mother, not only in that lifetime, but in many, many other lifetimes. And so when later, when Siddhartha achieved the state of Buddha, it is said that in order to repay the kindness of his mother, he was in the celestial realms for 3 months. And after those 3 months, after spending 3 months teaching his mother in the heaven of the 33, in the celestial realm of the 33, of course, he also taught other beings that are in that celestial realm. And then after that, it said that he returned into the world to continue teaching his human disciples. And so that return from the celestial realms, that day is called the day of the descent from the heaven of the 33, so-called in Tibetan as Labab Duchen. In a way, it celebrates the Buddha's return into the human world to continue to teach us the Dharma. It also, of course, celebrates, or it should remind us of the importance of remembering the kindness that others have shown to us. So even Buddha himself took 3 months to go repay the kindness of Queen Maya. Then, of course, the Buddha returning into the world, it's a cause for celebration because it is said that the Buddhas will only remain in the world insofar as there's a need for them to be in the world. That need is not just simply people wanting. It is also dependent on, we say, the merit of the world, whether it has enough merit or not to continue to receive instructions from the Buddha. So this return was good because he was gone for 3 months, and it wasn't sure, whether he would return or not. Then subsequently, in the tradition, one of the things that is said is also that that basically our teachers will be around only if the conditions are right for them to be around. If the conditions are not right, if they're not needed, if there's no merit, so to say, to kind of make use of them, so to say, then the conditions will be such that they will depart. And so there is the practice of, as part of the sevenfold offering, the practice of requesting the teachers, requesting, of course, the supreme teacher, the Buddhas, requesting them to remain in the world, to remain in the world, so that we will not be without guides. And so that is part of the practice that is done on a regular basis. So sometimes when Also, like in big teaching occasions in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, at the end of a teaching, with the really important teachers, a very formal ceremony is done to request the teacher to remain in the world, and so they sort of enact this scene where the 5 dakinis will come. The idea is that the dakinis are coming to escort the teacher away to go to other realms to benefit other beings. Then there's an intervention in this ritual whereby the disciples said, please don't take our teacher. And so like these human-sized almost effigies are made representing the teacher. And that's like being given to the dakinis and say, take this substitute so that, you don't take it. And so it's also the idea that, once the merit has been spent, right, receiving all the teachings, if we don't accumulate further merit, then the role of the teacher is done. So Buddha's coming back into this world after being gone for those 3 months is considered really important. Because otherwise, if you look at the other 3 occasions, it seems as if this occasion seems like, oh, well, what's the big deal, right? Because the other 3 occasions commemorate, so one of them, like Choko Duchen, commemorates the first time the Buddha taught, the Dharma formally in this world, which is the turning of the teaching of the 4 Noble Truths. So that's commemorated as equally important. Then another commemoration is the Sakadawa Duchen, which commemorates both the birth, or rather commemorates the enlightenment and the passing away of the Buddha. In some traditions in Tibet, it says that it's only the enlightenment and the passing away. But some traditions, like in other Buddhist traditions, what's called Vesak, which is Sakadawa Duchen, commemorates birth, awakening, enlightenment, and passing away. So that's the third of these 4 holy days. And then the fourth of the 4 holy days, it's the great display of miracles. And that is said to commemorate a time where the Buddha was debating these other systems, other beliefs that were current during his time, that he debated them and defeated these other systems. And then when these others, having lost kind of reasoning, which is what debate is about, having lost in the demonstration of reasoning, they became unreasoned in the sense of they use magic powers to try to defeat the Buddha. And it is said that the Buddha then displayed also magic powers to overcome that magic. So if reasoning they don't accept, now superstition comes out, so to say, and the Buddha used greater superstition, so to say, to overcome and defeat that. That's the great display of miracles. So these are the 4 days, and today is the Buddha returning into the world to continue to teach. So it's considered, these 4 days, it's said that all virtuous actions done on these 4 days, and I would say with the understanding of the significance of these 4 days, then all the virtues that we engage in is said to produce millionfold, billionfold results beyond the same acts on other days. And again, I would say, whether we take it literally or not, the point is to emphasize the significance of these 4 days and what that means to us in our own life, our Dharma life, how these 4 days might inspire us to, in our practice, and give some perspective of what is helpful and necessary for the longevity of our own process of waking up. Because this process of waking up is not an easy one. In a way, you are declaring war on business as usual. And that's what we're doing. We're declaring war on business as usual, and that creates opposition. So our habit patterns that have gotten so comfortable are not going to like it, and they retaliate. If they're not retaliating, then probably the Dharma is not threatening them so much. But when the Dharma is really threatening them, when the light of clarity is being shined upon confusion, confusion doesn't like it. So this text called Dispelling the Darkness of Confusion, or Dispelling the Darkness of Ignorance, it's composed by His Holiness the Drigung Kyabun Chesang, one of the 2 heads of Drigung Kagyu today. And so we will offer these lamps, these 108 lamps that we have prepared here on behalf of everyone. Of course, ourselves, we're offering them. And then we want to think together with us here, offering all our Dharma brothers and sisters who might not be here physically with us today, wherever they might be. Think of them as present, and then think of your own family and friends who may or may not be directly connected to Dharma. Think of them being present as well. And then finally, think of all beings being present, making this lamp offering. There is a table of contents in that book too. That might give some hint where the page is. So we think like that, and in fact, the text says you should think that you are present in as numerous places as there are grains of sands in the Ganges River. That you are simultaneously present in all those places, making offerings of this lamp. So it's a vision of vastness. So all these thinking, all these visualization or imagination, the purpose is to help us to go to a place of vastness, openness, so that only in this vastness of heart and mind can our offerings really illuminate the darkness of confusion or ignorance. So for those who are on the live watching on the live cast, maybe we can turn the camera just for a moment to look at the lamp stupa during the offering. Just move the whole thing. No, the whole stand, you can move it. So page 73.
73?
Correct. Lloyd, could you take the bumper to bless the lamps? Same as what we were doing earlier, 3 times. This lamp made from precious jewels becomes as large as the 3,000 worlds. In the middle of a boundless ocean of melted butter appears the wick of the Lamb, high as king of mountains. We invite Buddhas of the 10 directions, each one manifesting clearly 100 million times. Light fills the space from the pinnacle of samsara down to the hell of unceasing torment, completely illuminating the darkness of ignorance. May I see the faces of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. Om Vajra Aloke Ahom. This lamp that is the vast alaya consciousness of beings is filled with melted butter of the completely pure Dharma Dhatu. On the wick of the precious bodhicitta shines the flame of the spontaneous five bodies of the conquerors. This blazing flame of self-arisen wisdom is offered to gurus, idams, dakinis, and guardians. May all downfalls be repaired, the mundane and supreme attainments achieved. Om Guru Deva Dakini Dharmapala Saparivara Aloke Pratija Swaha. So next is the dedication of this lamp offering. So generally, of course, we offer these lamps, 108 lamps, for the dispelling of confusion of all beings everywhere. Since all suffering, all unhappiness, all the undesirable things that we experience is the result of this basic confusion. So to dedicate and pray for the dispelling of confusion, it's not just the ordinary confusion that we're talking about. It's the very root of the suffering of samsara that is being removed. So this then, of course, includes all the other types of unpleasant, undesirable experiences that we face. So in particular, there are two names there of two individuals whose friends or family have requested that we particularly think of them. There is Patricia in Australia, and then I think it's Patricia in Australia, and Sharon in Malaysia. Both of them that we're dedicating as well to. Then dedicating in a different way is today. It's also Habab Duchen also commemorates the birth of the current Drigung Kyabun Chungsang. So Chungsang Rinpoche is one of two heads of Drigung Kagyu. You probably don't hear much about his name because he is still in Tibet. And so Drigung Kyabun Chesang Rinpoche has been here. You'll have met him. But there's another head of the lineage as well. And he was born on Habab Duchen Day, which is today. And so we also dedicate this to him. And in that case, it is really dedicating it to the Dharma remaining strong and firm in the world. And that because we say that these sublime beings are only born in the world for one purpose, to benefit others. But of course, others, if they lack the circumstance and the ability to receive the benefit, then the sublime beings have other work to do, other places. So in praying for the longevity and the continued ability of teachers to guide us, we have to not just pray, just like the Milarepa song that we looked at the last time says. Prayers without the proper action accompanying the prayers, that's just wishful thinking. So even as we pray, and prayers are helpful, prayers can be powerful, but then if we don't complement those prayers with actions, then it becomes wishful thinking. So now we do the dedication, starting on page 76. Emaho, the clear illumination of this wonderful and marvelous lamp is offered to the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon, to Gurus, Idams, Dharkinis, and Dharmapalas, all the infinite pure lands in the 10 directions, and to the assembly of deities of the mandalas, all sentient beings of the lower 6 realms, from now on in all their future lives. May they see all the Buddha's pure lands and become inseparable from the protector limitless light. By achieving the state higher than the sky of the deities of the 3 jewels and 3 roots, please bless us to immediately actualize this aspiration prayer by the power of truth. Deya da Benta Kriya Awa Buddha Naya Swaha. So now we come back to the Milarepa program. As I said, and so now we come back to the Milarepa program. As I explained in the beginning of this series, the series started last weekend for a full day program on Saturday, and then on the morning of Sunday. And what we did, especially at the beginning of this program, was to integrate this practice text called the Guru Yoga of Jisun Shepa Dorje, to integrate this practice text together with the teachings on this small collection of songs of Milarepa. So that's how we did it. Today and in the next 2 Sundays, we are also going to do this, but in a much more abbreviated way, because this text is pretty long. But it is possible to kind of extract the key elements in this text and to use certain of these key elements without doing the entire text. So we already started with the refuge and bodhicitta prayers. So then to continue on in this text, the next part is called the 7-branch prayer, which is page 9 and 10. But as I said, today we'll do an abbreviated form, and so we will leave out the 7-branch prayer. And instead we go to this self-blessing on page 11. What self-blessing is referring to is the language of blessing is obviously religious language, right? But this blessing that we are talking about here, even though it's obviously religious vocabulary, to use the word blessing, but Buddha's teachings is fundamentally non-theistic. Non-theistic. What non-theistic means here isn't so much that it's a godless system. Non-theistic means that we do not think that happiness or suffering, clarity or confusion can ultimately come from somewhere else, someone else, somewhere better, and someone more powerful. Ultimately, we don't believe that, because we believe what the Buddha taught, which is that happiness or suffering, clarity or confusion is ultimately due to our own doing. Now, ultimately, it doesn't mean, therefore, on the relative level, we cannot be helped by others. Sometimes I think we also make the mistake of thinking, oh, the Buddha taught that only we can help ourselves. And so then some Buddhists kind of, inhabit a very hopeless world, thinking that only, we can help ourselves. That's not the case, because there are other beings who are much more awakened with less confusion, and so they can guide us, such as the teachers that we encounter in our daily lives, Dharma teachers especially, but also other teachers to whatever degree, whether they have or don't have the title or the name of teachers, whoever whatsoever that can bring us a step closer to clarity, a step further away from confusion, then those are beings that are helping us. Then we also say, there are beings such as, Chenrezig, Tara, Manjushri, Jambala, Amitabha, and those are also sublime beings that nonetheless exist, whether you and I are utterly confused or utterly free from confusion. So we can also rely on them. But this kind of reliance on them, we say, isn't a theistic reliance. So then going back to what does theistic mean or non-theistic mean? Non-theistic doesn't mean that we are godless, that we think of ourselves as God, it's kind of this pridefully. No, it just means that we understand that ultimately happiness and suffering is our own doing. As much as other people can help, if we ourselves don't decide that we have had enough of confusion, and if we don't, commit ourselves to the path of waking up, then nobody can do anything. But once we decide, once we make that decision, then of course, help and assistance will come if we open ourselves up to help and assistance. So, in this non-theistic understanding, what does self-blessing mean? Self-blessing means that underneath this kind of explicitly religious language of blessing, it means here to affirm to affirm the fundamental truth of who we are, to remind ourselves the fundamental truth of who we are, which in this case, in this particular text, it is expressed as the deity Heruka and Vajravarahi. So obviously this comes from a Vajrayana cultural context. And if you say, well, I don't know who Heruka and Vajravarahi are, don't get stuck on that point. And this whole section called self-blessing is saying that remember who you are. Or in the Zen tradition, it says your original face, your original identity, even before your parents were born. There's a type of Zen koan. What is your original face? Or less literally, your true identity before even your parents were born. So that's talking about the innate goodness, the innate Buddha that we are. So in terms of visualization practice, so here it describes the color, the look of Heruka, and then the how, ornaments that he wears, and then Vajravarahi. But again, you don't need to get stuck on that and make it an obstacle. This part called self-blessing is just one of many methods to remind ourselves of who we are and not to deteriorate from that kind of position. So now we're on page 11 and self-blessing. So we can, so rather than all of us repeating it, which is often how this is done, I want to suggest that you can just close your eyes and listen to me describing the visualization, and then you just better to focus on feeling you are these deities. So it's not the case that you are Heruka and Vajravarahi is someone else that you are embracing, but rather the aspects of your being manifest as Heruka and Vajravarahi. Again, don't get too caught up in, like, oh, I need to visualize exactly how they look, but try to connect to the underlying principle and then relax into that principle. And then when we get to the mantra, then we can recite that mantra together. When you're reciting the mantra, sometimes just listen to the mantra and understand the mantra is the deity in the form of sound. So the mantra is not like a name that you're calling out to someone and hope that whoever you're calling would hear you, but rather the very production of the sound is to presence, to bring into our presence the deity in the form of sound. Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddho Hang. From the natural radiance of emptiness, which is free from elaborations of arising and ceasing, I am Heruka, in the manner of complete recollection in a single instant, with one face and 3 eyes in the color of pure space, with a top knot ornamented with a jewel across Vajra and a half moon, ornamented with 5 skulls and wearing a garland of fresh heads, complete with the 6 charnel ground ornaments and the tiger skin skirt, holding the Vajra and bell with hands crossed at the heart, assuming a pose above cushions of Bhairava and Kalaratri, enjoying with passion red Vajravarahi, who is embracing him with hands grasping a hook knife and skull cup, adorned with the 5 symbolic ornaments, appearing vividly the Samaya and Jnana beings, indivisible. Om Shri Haha Hong Hong Pe, 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 Om Shri Haha Hong Hong Pe. That is the mantra of Heruka. And now the mantra of Vajravarahi, the feminine aspect of our being. Om Vajra Bharojaniye Hong Hong Pe, 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 Om Vajra Bharojaniye Hong Hong Pe. The next section is called generating the support. Support is basically talking about the whichever deity that we're meditating on. So here, because it's a Guru Yoga text, so we see the Guru in the form of Milarepa in the space in front of us. So that image, that visualization that is going to be in front of us is what we are building in this next section of the practice. Generating the support means building kind of a vessel. And this vessel is what's going to contain the actual deity that will be invited to come from Milarepa's Pure Land. So, which is to say, to invite Milarepa to come from his Pure Land in order to remain, at least temporarily, with us here. And so, in order for Milarepa's presence to manifest here, we need to have a container for it. So during empowerments, for example, the container is like the vase, which is used to put on your head, to pour water out, because that's the container, that's the support. And so whatever deity's empowerment, the deity's blessings come and dissolve inseparably with the contents of the vase. And the vase is said then to be the palace of that deity. And the contents of the vase, the water, has now turned into the deities. And then it's put on your head, poured into you. So symbolically, you become one with the deity. Here, in order to invoke and to bring Milarepa into our presence, and Milarepa is inseparable from our guru, from our guide in this process of waking up, then it needs a container. What is this container? This container is what we prepare in our minds. So in other words, you could say our mind itself is what's going to contain Milarepa's blessings. Of course, that mind here takes a particular form, a particular shape. And this is what's being described in this next section. And so it talks about how there is a lion throne. On top of the lion throne, there is lotuses or a big lotus. And on top of the lotus is a moon disk. But here in the meditation, it tells you what the lion throne represents, what the 100-petal lotus represents, and what the full moon represents. What these three things represent is the 5 pranas, the 5 wind energy, the 5 nadis, which is the 5 channels, and then the channels are where the energy moves through, and then the 5 essences. The essences are these most essential essence that move according to the wind energy through the channels. And the channels includes the nodes, which is called chakras, the nodes. So here it's basically saying that the subtle aspects of our physical body, is the actual container for these blessings. So the blessings are not being contained anywhere else, even though what is described is fantastical, like deities in front of us. But the true understanding here is like, this is none other than our own being. Of course, the technical aspect of this practice has us appearing as Heruka and Vajravarahi, remember, the self-blessing. And then now in front is Milarepa's support, that will be described, and then Milarepa's blessings come into the support. But actually, even that support is actually ourselves. Then calling the blessings into the Guru to go into this support. Again here, just listen and meditate as I read the words. The nature of the mind that is primordially pure is Buddha. And that's the equivalent of that space that we need to have in order for this visualization to arise. So the space is the nature of the mind, which is primordially pure, which is awake. And within that space, within that wakefulness, within that openness, on a stacked lion throne, which is the purity of the 5 pranas, the 5 wind energies, is a 100-petal lotus cushion, which is the purity of the 5 channels and nodes. On top of that, upon the full moon of the purity, which is the purity of the 5 essences, is a golden Om syllable, which is the very embodiment of the conquerors of the 3 times. From this Om, rays of light radiate, benefiting sentient beings, absorbing back into oneself. The Om transforms completely into Venerable Shepa Dorje. He has a reddish white glow and looks directly ahead at us with a smile. Clad in cotton, he wears a meditation belt that holds his knee. He has a tangle of hair, the remaining of which is loose like the leaves of a willow tree. His right hand brandishes the indestructible Vajra of emptiness, and his left hand holds a vase of elixir of deathlessness. Humming the sound of Dharma and the mesmerizing melodies of his experiential songs, songs that we will hear in a little bit. Milarepa sits in the manner of enjoyment. He is the emanator of ecstasy. Surrounded by myriad darkinies spread out like clouds, sitting above him is the assembly of gurus, conferring the supreme empowerments. Idam deities in front rain down cities, while dharmapalas and guardians at the edge of the throne ward off obstacles. Rainbow lights like clouds spread in the middle space. Rays of light emanate from the three vajras at the three places, meaning forehead, throat, and heart. These lights go out to the Pure Lands, such as Abhirati, which is where Milarepa is now, the Pure Land of Abhirati, and to other Pure Lands, inviting all the deities to come and dissolve inseparably into this support that we have visualized. As you hear the bell and the Dhammaru, think that all these blessings are showering down like snowflakes dissolving into an ocean. So together we repeat these verses of invitation and of settling down and being present on page 15. Bottom of 15. Buddhists and Bodhisattvas from all directions and all times, who regard migratory beings with wisdom and compassion, with your invincible miraculous powers, for the benefit of all migratory beings, come forth from the limitless Pure Lands. As sentient beings such as I increase our devotion, and as you love all migratory beings as a teacher towards his disciples, may you come with the power of your compassion to this place, at this time as we invite you with the power of our faith. E arali pem vajra samaja. Now, bottom of page 16, continuing. Lord Shepa Dorje and your heirs, may you kindly consider amatory beings with your compassion, and steadfastly remain bestowing upon our three doors the great blessings of your body, speech, and mind. Tishta Bhadra Hong Samaya Satam. Now we offer homage to them. Think of them as already in our presence. Ho, embodiment of the five bodies, the all-pervading Lord of the mandalas, the clear physical manifestation of great primordial wisdom, the single sufficient refuge, cotton-clad venerable one. Yearning with absolute devotion, I pay homage with my three doors. Namo Namah Hum. Namo Namah, even though it's transcribed as Namah, it's pronounced, I think, more like Namah. There's a quick A after the H. Namo Namah. Namo Namah Hum. Actually, in spoken Sanskrit, I learned that it's a common greeting, which in modern Hindi becomes namaste. Yeah? In Hindi is namaste, or more respectful, namaskara. But in classical Sanskrit, people greeted each other with namo namaha. And so this is also used in this liturgy to greet the deities that have arrived. And so there's a kind of a sense of intimacy in this namo namaha home. The next parts are the offerings. So various offerings, outer, inner, secret, then outer, inner, secret, general offerings, and outer, inner, secret, and innermost secret mandala offering as well. It's the next part. For today, we will go now to page 23, which is for the recitation. 23. Again, you don't have to read this, just listen as I read it out and you imagine what is being described. On a moon mandala in the center of the heart of Milarepa is an Om syllable encircled by the mantra. Rays of light radiate, which transforms the outer container, the outer universe, and its beings into deity forms. And sounds turn into mantras, and thoughts into the mind of reality. Within this state of the great expanse of equality, repeat the following mantra. Now, this mantra that is to be repeated has the name of Milarepa and the idams and the dakinis. It basically says, O great Guru, Milarepa, using one of his Dharma names, Sanskrit Dharma names, Vajradwaja, Doje Gyaltsen in Tibetan, and then surrounded by idams, dakinis, dharmapalas. Please confer your knowledge, accomplishment, blessings. Mahaguru Vajradwaja Devata Kini Saparivara Kyana Siddhi Phala 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 Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dharkini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dharkini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. Om Mahaguru Vajra Dhwaja Deva Dhagini Sapare Vara Jnana Siddhi Phala Hum. So now we look at the collection of songs. So last weekend, we covered the first 3 songs called the 6 Illusions, Song of 9 Meanings, and the Song of 7 Truths. Today we will look at the 7 inner and outer arisings. But before we do that, let's first look at, again, review the second song called the 6 Illusions as Metaphors of Impermanence. So let us read this together. Look there at all the objects appearing outside, fleeting visions like last night's dream. When you recall their dream-like, these delusions make your mind uneasy. You cut delusion at the root, Rechungpa. When I reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. When looking inward at your body, transitory like a city of Gandharvas, its rising and falling make your mind uneasy. Have you cut through birth and death, Rechungpa? When I reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. When looking inward at the perceiving mind, fugitive like a bird in the crest of a tree, so restless it makes your mind uneasy. Have you taken a hold of mind's secure ground, Rechungpa? When I reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. When looking inward at the breath moving inside, it is impermanent like mist in the air. The fading and passing of mist makes your mind uneasy. Have you seen movement vanish on its own, Rachompa? When I reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. When looking at these friends assembled here, they are transient like crowds at a fair. Once gathered, they are sure to part, making your mind uneasy. Have you set relations on a higher level, Rachompa? When we reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. When looking at the wealth collected here, evanescent like honey of the bees, someone else enjoying your things makes your mind uneasy. Have you opened the treasure of mind itself, Rachompa? When I reflect on this, sublime Dharma comes to mind. So, Milarepa says, meditation on death is the king of all meditations. So, if you're not familiar with the Buddha Dharma, Buddha's teachings, it might sound really morbid that meditating on death is the king of all meditations. These days we think meditation helps you to relax, helps you to be less stressful, helps you to be happier and healthier. And so if you only know meditation or spiritual practice with those goals in mind, then it will probably come as a shock. This thing that Milarepa said, that to meditate on death is the king of all meditations. Of course, Milarepa wasn't talking to us necessarily. For sure, he's not talking to those of us who kind of take certain things from the Dharma, basically to just enhance life as we know it, death as we know it, and everything in between as we know it. Can that be done? Probably. Can that produce kind of measurable results? Apparently. They're doing all kinds of controlled scientific studies to see the benefit of certain meditation, mindfulness techniques. So from that perspective, of course, it's fine. In fact, it's good if it can bring some kind of relief, some kind of happiness to people who are suffering. So that's one level of relating to aspects of what the Buddha taught. But if we are relating to the Buddha's teachings as people who have taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, so then we need to have a different understanding of the role of meditation. The role of meditation is to stir samsara to its depths. It means to stir it up so that we see how messy it is. Because in part is because we're not yet convinced of how messy it is. Then we still put most of our hopes into it. Now this is not quite, I always emphasize this, especially since, I live in a community that I think, thank goodness, cares about these things. This is not to be applied. It's bad, I say it's bad Buddhology just as bad theology to say, oh, seeing how messy samsara is and not putting our hopes in samsara, then some people think this is to be interpreted as who cares about the environment? It's all going to hell in any case. Who cares about social justice? Samsara is fundamentally unjust. All of that. That's bad Buddhology. In the same way that I think I would say my bias, it's bad theology to say, God is in charge. Why do we need to worry? The environment, it doesn't matter. A new kingdom of heaven and earth is going to come. I think that's bad theology, in my opinion. So whether it's Buddha's teachings or Jesus's teachings, we could, if we're not careful, we could distort them. So here, the idea of not putting our hopes in samsara is not the equivalent of saying, don't put our hopes in this world, but don't put our hopes in our confused way of relating to the world, because samsara is not a place. And its opposite, nirvana, it's also not a place. It's not a location. Samsara and nirvana are states of being. So as long as we are still existing in a confused way, then we are in samsara. When free from that confusion, we are in nirvana. So in a very important couple of lines, very pithy, but very important text called The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which is said to have been composed by one of Milarepa's chief disciples, Gampo. It says very clearly what samsara and what nirvana is in the introduction to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So let me read it for you. It says, in general, all phenomena, and you can translate phenomena as experience. Phenomena would be describing things as objects. On the objective end of experience, we say phenomena. On the subjective end, if you look at it more from the subjective end, from the end of the perceiver, then you could say all experiences. So whether experience or phenomena, it's interchangeable, right? In this context. So in general, Gampopa says all phenomena, all experiences are included in the two categories of samsara and nirvana, meaning they're either samsara or they're nirvana. Then he goes, that which is called samsara is empty by nature, meaning it doesn't have intrinsic, it doesn't have ultimate status. Why? Because it is merely confused projection. What is samsara? Samsara is simply confused projections. Samsara is what we experience when we project in a confused way. Then he goes on to say, its defining characteristic is that it manifests as suffering. How do we know it's confusion? Because the end result of that is suffering. Then we know it's confusion. Then he goes on to say that which is called nirvana is also empty by nature. Even nirvana isn't a self-existing entity. Because on this end of confusion, when we talk about one thing, we necessarily need the other thing. It's kind of pair. It's twin that produced it. So nirvana is also empty by nature. But here's what's important. But all the confused projections are exhausted and dissipated. Meaning, how do we get to nirvana? It's when our confused projections have exhausted themselves and is now dissipated, like clouds disappearing into the sky. And its defining characteristic is freedom from all suffering. Interestingly, he didn't say happiness. Because happiness is sort of kind of hard to say what it is. We all get it. What is freedom from suffering? So both samsara and nirvana are not places that we're born into, but states of being that we experience. And therefore, when we say, if we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then at that point on, our relationship with samsara needs to change. And the first step in that change is to see clearly the unreliable nature and the ridiculousness of counting on confused projections to work out. Confused projections would never work out. So as long as we're confused, no matter how pretty the projection, it's mistaken. So don't rely on that. Don't count on that. So often when we encounter difficulties, when we encounter situations, conditions that we don't like, we did not expect, we were surprised by it, we have things pulled from underneath our feet, then we are disoriented, we're shocked, surprised, all of that. I know this is not fashionable to say because it sounds like, ooh, some sort of this pride, but it's okay. You can use the pride in a skillful way. A friend recently, perhaps because she only visited and not so much part of this culture, this country, and so able to see, to have some clarity. And so, she said, she was talking about how she was talking with someone else. And these other people were in a very kind of down mood. And then she said, but we are Buddhist, We have taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So we should not mope around like other people. Other people can't help it. This is what our training is about. This is where we have to bring out all the tools that we've been collecting and not just say, oh, it's so hard, it's so hard. Yeah, well, if it is so hard in the first place, don't even collect the tools. What were you collecting the tools for? If ultimately, when it's time to use those tools, we just say, oh, it's so hard, it's so hard. Yeah, she said, you have to take some pride and say, I have taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And so I should not mope around like other people are. Not in the sense of like looking down on others, but at least pull ourselves up and say, now time to get to work. What do we have to change? What do we have to protest? What do we have to organize? Get to work. Don't mope around. Oh, poor me, poor this, poor that. So I thought, when she reported to me what she said, I thought, yeah, that is so true. We sometimes shy away because we Buddhists like to talk about how we are all the same, we are all equal, we are all one. But then we forget, in some ways, we are asked to stand apart. Just as, Christians that follow the teachings of Jesus are also asked to stand apart and to bear witness. We are also asked, and I think all traditions of spirituality assumes that if you are going to step into this, you have to see yourself as fundamentally different from the rest of the world. And Jesus said, right? Being of this world, or in this world, but not of this world. And then in Buddhism, why is it that all these sublime beings are sitting on these super gigantic lotuses? I don't know if it's that comfortable sitting on a lotus flower, even if you could find one big enough for you to sit on. It's the symbolism of the lotus. Lotus or water lily, they grow, if you have never seen them growing, they grow in muddy ponds, in dirt ponds, wet and messy. But if you look at their leaves and you look at their blossoms, no mud, no dirt can taint it, because they have this waxy surface. It just slips off. But it's rooted in the mud. If you pull it out of the mud, it's not going. Actually, lotuses don't stay open. If you cut it open and you stick it in water, it goes, it closes. So it has to be rooted in mud. It's such a beautiful symbol, But we think, get me out of the mud, get me out of the mud. Yeah, get you out of the mud, then the lotus closes. It's the mud that causes the lotus to bloom and provide beauty for others to enjoy. But it doesn't get tainted. Whether it's leaves or it's flowers, it's never tainted by the dirt. So be in the world, but not of the world. We need to stand apart from the world. It's important for those of us who have taken refuge, and especially generated bodhicitta, to say, my life is different now. I think Buddhism, especially in the West, is presented as this very cool religion. Very cool, sometimes become cold and freezing. We are missing that kind of born-again experience. But it's there. If you read Shantideva's Benefits of Bodhicitta in the first chapter, the language there is really that of, how wonderful that bodhicitta is now in my heart. Then no matter what happens, hallelujah, praise bodhicitta. Because I have been saved. It says, the moment bodhicitta even fleetingly arises in our heart, from that day onwards, We are sons and daughters of the Buddha. We are no longer part of samsara. We might be rooted in samsara, but now we are no longer part of samsara. We have been born in the Buddha's family now. We have bodhicitta in us. And so we do not act and behave like the rest of the world. You know? We do not despair anymore. Whatever the difficulties, we cannot be like the rest of the world. We have to stand apart. Not so that we can look down on, but we need to stand apart so that we can help. We can make a difference. So that's really important to get that point. So with that kind of confidence, kind of awaken, then when we look at these metaphors of impermanence, it should not unnerve us, but it should instead remind us in case we get distracted, even after we have been saved. Some of us get distracted from time to time by the old ways. And so here, Milarepa tells Rejompa, consider these impermanence. Consider impermanence through these 6 illusions. The first is the illusion of objects appearing outside. No matter what they are. Objects does not only mean stuff, yeah? Objects. More so, is talking about the experiences that arise when the eye comes into contact with things that are seen, when the nose comes into contact with things that are smelled. All the physical senses, and also when the heart comes into contact with things that are felt. All those, he says, all those are objects appearing outside. Meaning outside here doesn't mean like outside of your body outside. Outside here means outside of the essence of mind. So thoughts, feelings, all those are outside already. It's not just stuff outside. Stuff outside is way outside. So here it says, look at all the objects appearing outside. So whatever that you kind of say, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that. So whatever already arises from a bifurcation between subject and object, all those are outside. So your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, all those are outside. He says, but all of those are like last night's dream. When you first see this, when you first understand this, then it makes you uneasy. It makes you uneasy. But if you cut the delusion, if you stop believing in delusions, then we don't have a problem. So I've seen a bumper sticker. I don't know if it's Buddhist or not in origins, the inspiration, but it says, don't believe what you think. Don't believe what you feel. Of course, we say, certain things, gut level, I know. Yes, maybe that's true. But it's also good advice. Don't believe what you think so quickly. I would add so quickly, so immediately, and don't believe what you feel so quickly and so immediately. And often problems come because we kind of surrender to whatever we feel, whatever we think, whatever we see, whatever we smell, whatever we taste, whatever we touch. we immediately say, oh, yeah, this is true, this is right, this is always true, this is always right. And of course, nothing is like that. Everything is situationally true. So the Buddha does not deny that in dreams you can have nightmares and you can have, oh, my dream came through, or nightmares. And the experiences that come respectively, whether you had a nightmare or you had a dream fulfilled. But either case, they are illusory. They're illusory-like. They are dream-like. In other words, don't hold on so tightly. With everything in the world, don't hold on so tightly. Don't clench our fist so tightly. Relaxed and hold. Hold on, but in a relaxed way. In instructions on Tai Chi, it says, it gives the example, it says, the strongest person has difficulty pulling his finger, or her finger for that matter, away from the grasp of a baby. I say the baby's grasp of a finger is very tight, but very relaxed. The baby is not tightening, but it's not so easy to pull your finger out. I don't know scientifically true or not, but experientially you can see how that's true. Maybe because you don't want to yank the baby. That's beside the point, right? But there's something there, right? The baby just kind of very relaxed, can have such a firm grip on your finger. But as we grow older and older, we don't trust this secure grip. We and then when we and then something very strong pulls out, leaves behind a burn. So to regard everything as dreamlike, as last night's dream, is not to become dissociated with our feelings. It's just don't believe so strongly in feelings. And how do we do that? Right? Again, it doesn't mean being half present, living life by being half there and half gone. Some people think, oh, that's being spiritual. That's just being emotionally unavailable, or spiritual bypassing and thinking this is spiritual. No, it's being completely present, but without grasping. Not easy, of course, but possible. Really possible. Don't run away and don't feed. Be present for it and watch. And watch. And watch. It says, look inward at your body. Now just look at your body. It says, it's transitory like a city of Gandharvas. Gandharva cities are very ephemeral. It says that Gandharva cities are produced when a drop of water is left behind anywhere, potentially. And once that drop of water dries up, the entire city is destroyed. So we think, oh, Gandharvas must be, really kind of poor Gandharvas. But our existence is actually a Gandharva city. In someone else's universe, we are that one drop. Yeah? In someone else's universe, we are probably that one drop that dries up within 5 minutes of that person's universe. I was listening to NPR some time back, and it was an interview, I think, with the cosmologist. I think that's what you call them, people who study the cosmos. So one of the, of course, big questions for cosmologists is, are we the only ones out here or out there or wherever, right? Are we the only ones out here? And so far, it seems like, we don't quite have evidence, right, that there is anybody else. Of course, then many of us also don't like to be so conceited to think that, in the whole vast universe, we are the only ones. Right? So then there are some theories, according to this interview, as to, well, so how do you explain? And the one that I remember, this cosmologist gave a few explanations, but the one I remember is he said that it could be that they exist, others, other than what we know, but we are so small in relation to them that we're not even aware that, that they are there. And they're maybe even noticing that we are a speck. In the same way, like an ant crawling around actually don't see us. And then crushed if we happen to be in their way, finished. So that's the metaphor being used here to call a city of Gandharvas. Update that to, modern cosmologists, what they're saying. We're just like that. And then more specifically, our body. Yeah? And the body is the basis of us talking about birth and death. But if we so strongly identify with the body, then of course we suffer. Now, do we throw away all identification with the body and then, not take care of the body? I don't think we need to go to that extreme. Although, having said that, Milarepa did go to that extreme. He just completely threw his body into the winds. Now, do you have to do that? Well, you don't have to start there. Let me just say it that way. That Milarepa did it because he was strong enough to do it. And if we are not strong enough and we try to do it, then we might regret and then backfire, and then we can't handle it. So what I can say is, at the very least, it's always beneficial to not let your sense of self be so strongly tied to your body. Because when the body doesn't cooperate, then it's not just the suffering that comes from the body not cooperating, but there is a whole other layer of suffering that takes place. So that it's not just pain as a biological fact, but suffering as an existential problem. Right? There's a pain as a biological fact. Then there is suffering as an existential construct. Good news is, bad news is, as long as we have a body, that biological fact will not completely go away. In fact, it will increase as this body deteriorates. So that's the bad news. But the good news is, suffering is optional. Because suffering is, as one American Buddhist teacher puts it, suffering is pain multiplied by resistance. Pain multiplied by lack of ability to accept pain things going on, then that's suffering. Suffering can be reduced if we reduce resistance to zero. And there's only pain when it happens. That's a biological fact. So the way we do it is not to become so identified with the body. Take care of it. Without a healthy body, it's hard to focus on developing a healthy mind. So let's be realistic. Let's not try to attempt Milarepa, because most of us haven't found a Marpa that we would surrender to. If you have found a Marpa that you have surrendered to, then maybe you can attempt Milarepa like feats. But the practice actually says, may I become like you. So it's saying, may I meet my Marpa. But actually, how many of us are ready to meet our Marpas? That's okay. Maybe next lifetime. He's so unreasonable. But without Marpa, there's no Milarepa. Of course, without Milarepa, maybe there is no memory of Marpa too. Interdependence. The other element in being a non-theistic tradition, it means that we don't believe that anything that happens due to a single cause. That's the Buddhist definition of theistic. We're not talking about other people's belief in God. That's a different system. They have a different internal logic. So we're not concerning ourselves with that. When we say we are a non-theistic tradition, we mean that in theistic traditions, whether they actually exist or not out there, everything comes from a single cause. We say, no. Things arise due to the coming together of a number of causes and conditions. So this is important to remember. So that's just a little bit as a kind of refresher of the 6 illusions as metaphors of impermanence. And this is like the ngondra, the preliminary mind that we need to have before we move on to the other songs. All these songs exist within context. And this context, as the beginning, is to really reflect on impermanence, uncertainty, and change, and take that to heart. Take that to heart. And when we take that to heart, then it protects us from unnecessary pain, from suffering. That's why we meditate on that. That's why we take them to heart. We don't take them to heart so that we walk around feeling sorry for ourselves and also feeling like, why are you all having such a good time? Don't you know we're all going to die? But no, because when we have confronted the fear of death, of change, of uncertainty, then we become what? Fearless. We become fearless. The Song of 9 Meanings. Remember the grandma? Page 3. So let's read that together. Above Above are the pleasures of the higher realms, below the miseries of the three lower realms. In between, your helplessness to choose your destiny. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You're an angry woman who detests the Dharma. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on the qualified Lama. When you were first betrothed to this family, did you ever dream you become an old nanny goat? In the morning, you get up too early. In the evening, you go to bed too late. In between, your housework is endless. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You're now just an unpaid maid. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then you won't have to be like this. The patriarch of the family is the most important one. Incomes and earnings are next most longed for. Then sons and nephews are wanted most. When these three convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. For yourself, you have no share. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't be like this. The thief who gets your things by stealth, the robber who resorts to force, your fighting back turns out to be all in vain. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You are scorched when enemies are encountered. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't have to be like this. Gossip about other women and their manners interests you. The affairs of sons and nephews get your attention, and the babble of relatives and widows delights you. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You have turned into an avid listener. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't have to be like this. To get up is like yanking a peg out of the ground. With feeble legs, you wobble like a thieving goose. Earth and stone seem to shatter when you drop into a seat. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You have no choice but to obey your senility and weakness. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't have to be like this. Wrinkles crease your skin without, your bones stand out sharply from your shrunken flesh. And between, you are turning senile, deaf, blind, and dumb. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You're now a scowling old crone. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't have to be like this. Your food and drink is cold and foul. Your coat is heavy and in rags. And your bed is so rough it tears your skin. When these three conditions convene, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. You think you are half human and half dog. Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on the qualified Lama. And perhaps then it won't have to be like this. An opportune birth and liberation are rarer than stars seen in daytime. To be involved in samsara and designed to the lower realms is more common than your daily aches and pains. At this miserable time, when you're about to leave your body, Grandma, look at the movings in your heart. Can you face death with confidence? Really, you should practice the Dharma by relying on a qualified Lama. When all these conditions convene, when these things come together, then our heart moves and shakes and shudders and quakes, depending on how serious it is. Then we lose our composure. We lose our peace of mind. We become agitated. So he's not saying that this is necessary. all of these movings, all the shaking, all the quaking, all the shattering is the result of confused projections. Therefore, we are in samsara. But we're in nirvana when these three, any of these three, even if they convene and they come together, if our heart don't move, don't move, it's not affected, it's protected, then confused projections, as Gampopa says, have been exhausted and dissipated. Then that's nirvana, without going anywhere, without needing to go anywhere else. That's nirvana. Whose characteristic manifests as the end of suffering. No, not suffering anymore. Any questions or comments about what we just read?
Brought up an image in my mind when you were saying that of the Vietnam War, when being a Buddhist country, and how they would build the tunnels and fight in the tunnels and live in really rough conditions.
Yes.
And I'm not imagining what was going on in their mind in particular. But as a Buddhist culture, it's like it could seem like that it's not a place, but that you're surrounded by hell.
Yes.
If they were able to keep their calm in those moments.
Right. And then in the case of Tibetans losing their country, they're not saints. They can tell you their frustrations for sure, if you would listen. But as a people, they have done really well as refugees. And that has something to do with Buddhism. They are quick to act, as I said, they're proud of how tough they are. And even now in Eastern Tibet, it's like the wild, wild west. People will rob you and stab you without thinking twice. But notions of karma is really there. Bodhicitta is also there. Yeah. So overall, the way they have experienced their recent suffering has been pretty inspiring. Again, without kind of objectifying them as somehow special. And themselves, they will say, if we're special, it's because we have Dharma. To the degree that we have Dharma. Back to my point of, we should really, say, no, I'm supposed to be different. I'm not supposed to kind of get dragged into what everybody else is being dragged into. I'm supposed to stand firm and not lose courage. Let's take 10 minutes, stretch your legs, go get a mug of tea or something, and then we will continue. The 7 inner and outer arisings. So we will cover that song for the rest of the time.
At one time, a few people were here. think
So Milarepa is famous for these songs that he sings as instructions to people that he meets in his wanderings. In fact, he even sang songs like St. Francis to animals. There is one particular one where I don't have those songs in here, which is basically the song. It's a series. It's a song to a deer, song to a dog, and song to a hunter. Because the situation was that this hunter, aided with the dog, was chasing a deer. And so the deer was running in fear and comes across Milarepa. And then Milarepa started singing to the deer, and the deer sat down to listen. And then he sang the song to the deer. Then the dog arrives, ready to charge and to, go for the jugular veins of the deer. And Milarepa calmed the dog and say, "You sit down and listen. I have something to tell you." Then the dog sat down. Then after a while, the hunter comes, kind of upset, and first excited to see that the deer is there, then upset to see that the dog is not doing anything. And Milarepa said, you wait, you listen first, sit down. And so he sits down, and then all three of them were converted to the way of Dharma. It's a beautiful story. And other times Milarepa sang to non-humans. In the spirit world, all sorts of spirit entities is said to come to him, sometimes out of malevolence, sometimes out of fear, and attacked him. And then, but they were all kind of turned into becoming disciples of Milarepa. So he sang to both humans and non-humans and animals. And so much so that his songs, there are so many, they collected and gave it this name called the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. There aren't, as I explained before, there aren't literally 100,000. It just means, the collected songs of Milarepa. And these songs of Milarepa harken back to the time of the great siddhas, the great practitioners, tantric practitioners in India. Often these individuals were no longer, maybe at one time they were part of polite society, but they left polite society, so to say, including leaving the monastic seats of higher learning, such as Nalanda, Vikramasila, places which is the Indian equivalent of Cambridge, Oxford, a lot of prestige. But these great practitioners were often people who even left those situations, those conditions, to become these itinerant wandering yogis, teaching and instructing without much of care and institution, gathering groups of disciples that have dedicated their lives to them. In very much the same way as Jesus of Nazareth and his band of unruly, unseemly, less savory types. These were people, individuals that live on the edges. But important to note here that we should not glamorize living on the edges. These were people who fundamentally came from privileged backgrounds, who chose to live on the edges because it would bring a greater good. Yeah. So whether it was Jesus's disciples or Milarepa's disciples, they were often people of privileged background who saw what was needed of them for the greater good, and they walked away from their very comfortable lives. They walked away from their ordinary day-to-day lives. They walked away from business as usual and went to the edges of polite society and made an impact in the world. Yeah. So when we read about Milarepa, we read about his stories, we read about his songs, we should also remember what he did and what his students did and what they gave up for a greater good. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we giving up? Because something got to give. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have samsara and nirvana at the same time. You have to give. Something got to give. So what that might be, it's up to you. Unless, again, you have found your Marpa, then Marpa will let you know what you need to give. But remember, Marpa did not go looking for Milarepa. Milarepa came looking for Marpa. The teacher cannot force anyone to be a student. The teacher, the guide, cannot force anyone to be a disciple. The disciple is what makes a teacher a teacher. And in the last song, he keeps saying, go learn, go rely on a qualified Lama if you really want to learn the Dharma. If you really want to learn the Dharma. Even in Milarepa's time, there were a lot of charlatans. Even in Milarepa's time, there were a lot of, maybe not charlatans, but not yet qualified teachers. How much more the case in our times? So those of us who have the title or have the responsibility of being teachers, actually, if we're doing this right, it always feels very awkward because you look at yourself and you say, I'm not exactly yet doing what the teachings say should be done. So it's a little bit of hypocrisy, but no choice, The karma and merit of sentient beings, that's why we call these times degenerate age. It's certainly not degenerate in terms of material well-being, right? Way more people have, secure roofs over their heads. Way more people have inoculations that keep them alive beyond childhood. Way more people are educated in so many other ways. It's progress compared to, 300 years ago. But why do the Buddhist texts call this the degenerate age? Surely it's not talking about material progress, but it is talking about the suffering that we experience despite and in spite of being surrounded by material progress. We have truly become the realm of the hungry ghosts. Because it is said that in the realm of the hungry ghosts, it's not that there is no food around, but when that food touches their mouth, it bursts out into flames. Or in some cases, when the food goes down, succeeds in passing through the flaming mouth and going down the needle throats into the drum-like stomachs. That's how they describe hungry ghosts. Burning mouth, so that when anything you touch the mouth is too painful, the insides are all burnt, so you can't swallow. But even if you can force some food into your mouth, so little because the throat is the size of a needle. And then the stomach is the size of a drum, or sometimes the size of a barrel or even a mountain. It's constantly hungry. And then in some cases they say, in the daytime you eat, then in the nighttime, whatever goes into the stomach turns into an inferno, burning up. This must be monks suffering from heartburn terribly, you know, and feeling as if, you know, they're hungry ghosts. But really now, so many of us are living in the realm of hungry ghosts. We are surrounded by material progress and material comforts, but we are suffering tremendously, tremendously, and we can't get out. And this is the worst kind of suffering. Because at one point we believe that because we lack material stuff, so on that day when I have all the material stuff that I want, then I'll be happy. But that's not the case. Then what? Right? Then hopelessness sets in. At least when you don't have that much material comfort, you can imagine a day when I get all of it, I'll be happy. But that day just never arrives. And even worse, when it arrives, you're like, this is not what I signed up for. Then depression and hopelessness comes in. Spiritual depression and hopelessness settles in. In fact, it's even the case that we are surrounded by a wealth of dharma, but we are like hungry ghosts. We're like hungry ghosts. Because we're not ready to let the Dharma transform us. We still want to do it our way. So we don't want Marpa to turn up. We really don't want Marpa to turn up. Because we think, you know, I can probably figure it out myself. And how many times have we said that? And here we are still. So it is said that the Kagyu lineage, of course, all lineages of Tibetan Buddhism emphasizes the primacy, because of Vajrayana, emphasizes the indispensable role of the Lama or the Guru, the guide. But in particular, it is said that the Kagyu, even more strongly than any of the other lineages, because Gampopa even went to the extent of saying, if you have devotion to the Lama, that itself can be the cause for realizing Mahamudra. Mahamudra is the Vajrayana language for enlightenment. But other traditions will say, no, you absolutely need Vajrayana techniques. Gampopa actually says, if you have devotion in the Guru, that itself is even better than any of these techniques that you're trying to learn. In fact, Gampopa wasn't the first to say this. You know, back in India, many of the Mahasiddhas, Saraha, Tilopa, they were actually people who themselves, and including Gampopa, themselves did all sorts of, you know, what you might call mystical practices and energy work, right? All the intricate, complex, complicated yogic techniques. But in the end, they say, actually, there is an easier way. Well, quote unquote easier, which is devotion in an authentic Lama. Then that itself is your gateway to awakening. That you can bypass all the complicated, you know, forceful methods and just go direct into Mahamudra. So they say the Kagyu lineage especially kind of emphasizes that. And then sometimes others kind of accuses the Kagyu of being too loosey-goosey with Vajrayana stuff. But it's not that it's loosey-goosey. It's that it's saying, if you can enter this through the door of devotion, then you don't need to go through the hardship of these yogic techniques, these yogic methods. That devotion is what's more important. So, and devotion doesn't mean hero worship. It doesn't even mean always sticking around the guru. Milarepa didn't spend that much time with Marpa at all. Only 3 years, maybe. And even those 3 years, most of the time, it was just receiving instructions and go practice. Receiving instructions, go practice. Receiving instructions, go practice. Recently, again, I was blessed with a friend visiting and hearing, her talk about, not just talking about you can see it's coming from the heart. I have seen this, of course, but it was good to be reminded. There's tremendous devotion to her guru. That was very inspiring. That no matter what, the guru says. And it doesn't mean that she didn't struggle. She struggled how to reconcile her will with the will of the guru. But in the end, she said, you just have to jump. She's talking about being on the bus. There's this pilgrimage, originally 12 days, under the hot sun of Ladakh. There's no tree in sight anywhere, okay? And walking under the hot sun for hours and hours and hours every day in the summer. And for reasons that she did not share, by day 2, the guru stopped talking to all foreigners. Majority was Ladakhi, but there were a few hundred foreigners that went along. Guru just stopped by the second day. Apparently something happened where I think it's the foreigners kind of feeling like we came so far away, so demanding certain things, and the guru just completely ignored them, to the point of, when are we breaking camp to start the next day? No word. Told all the Ladakhis, you are not to share with them anything. So people starting dropping off. The foreigners started disappearing along the way. Couldn't take it anymore. And so until the end, only, maybe 100 left. And then suddenly on day 10, the guru said, that's it, pilgrimage over. People are like, there's 2 more days. It's like, no, done. I've arranged for the bus to wait for us when we arrive there. All of you can go now. Was the next time, something was communicated clearly. That it's the end. But one caveat. If you want to continue, you can, but no meals will be provided. No one's carrying your tent. No arrangements whatsoever. So all the foreigners got on the bus. And my friend also got on the bus. But her close friend that came together with her was one of like 6 people that wasn't on the bus. And so the bus was moving, started to move, to back out. And then she saw the guru walk by the group of 6 and turn and smile at them. And immediately she had her backpack, and then she thought, but my sleeping bag is packed on top of the bus. She said, what do I do? What do I do? And she goes, no, I have to leave the bus. And just as the bus was about to speed up, she jumped off the bus. And she joined the 7 people that continued. And she said, of course, no idea what's going to happen next, you know? No sleeping bag. At night, the temperature drops, really cold. Of course, everything worked out. She was alive to tell the story. And she said, that was really the real test, you know? When everything is well, and you talk about devotion, that's cheap and that's easy. But under those very difficult circumstances, so, you know, these individuals have met their marpa. You know, they're great blessings. They have met their marpa, and they only see their marpa maybe once every few years. But it's that kind of devotion that far away in the middle of nowhere, all intents and purposes in Dharma terms, barely any Dharma teachers come around those areas. They persevere, they continue. I'm talking about friends in Peru. I can count with 2 hands how many members there are. They built a stupa. And the person who went to help them build the stupa said, I have built stupas all around the world. He's like the stupa expert in our lineage. German guy, by the way. In the monastery in Tibet, he's in Nepal, he's famous for being a tyrant. He would slap the monks and beat them over their heads when they are working for him, and not this German guys, really. But the friend said, this earthquake in Nepal, every building was damaged except for the ones that he built. There's only one small crack in the monastery that he was responsible for. So all the monks were so, you know, like, oh, wow. Anyway, this stupa builder said, I have built many stupas in Nepal, in Ladakh, in even Middle East. This is record time, what you guys did. In less than 2 months, they got the whole stupa done. And they have teachers coming to them once or twice a year. And they accomplished that. And they accomplished that. And now I see how, you know, because it's devotion. And she says, devotion is not emotions. It's nothing to do with emotions. It has to do with toughness. No matter what, you don't give up. And she said, you know, literally, I thought I was going to die building this stupa. But it's my guru's wish that the stupa be built. And even I, she said, I have doubts at one point that should this stupa be built here? She said, because I'm a cultural anthropologist. And she said, one day I just look at this and go, oh my gosh, what have I done to this landscape? This doesn't belong here. Culturally, it's so jarring. right? How many Buddhists are there in the whole of Peru? And then we have like altered, she said, the landscape. She said, I even have those doubts. It's not easy. But she said, but no, you just have to keep. Now, you might call this fanaticism, but well, you could take it in a fanatical way and create a lot of havoc in the world. But in this case, I see that this is what keeps the Dharma always in your hearts. So ultimately, it's not about the Guru. The Guru is just the catalyst for the Dharma to be born in our hearts. To really have Dharma born in our hearts. Then we have no more fears, you know. We have no more fears. So Milarepa's story too is so much about his devotion. You could say it's his devotion to Marpa, but you could also say it's his devotion to his own potential, which is of course inseparable from the kindness of Marpa. This is how we talk about interdependence. Confidence and devotion to his ability that he's not going to give up, which is completely tied with Marpa's kindness to him. All those coming together. So he became, you know, the most known of all figures in Tibetan Buddhism, Milarepa. So here are 7 inner and outer arisings. Our father and mother as causes and conditions arise outside. So each of these, you will talk about what is the outside causes and conditions, and what's arising inside, and as a result, what happens. Basically, that's what each part, each verse is how it's constructed. Our outer father and mother as causes and conditions arise outside. Our all basis consciousness arises within. As the two connect, a complete human birth is attained. I was not born in the lower realms. Of merely this, I'm sure. It also has a sense of, I'm thankful. I'm sure. I'm thankful. I'm grateful that this has happened. And how can this happen? He says, well, you need the proper causes and conditions. So causes and conditions that are independent of you. That's what it means outside. So his parents met, right? And what are all the causes and conditions that led to his parents meeting? All of that, right? And then the all basis consciousness. Okay, so this is a technical term, which is alaya consciousness. In the lamp offering text that we did earlier, there's alaya consciousness. So alaya consciousness is complicated, how to explain this philosophically, but it's the closest, I guess, you could say, to the notion of a soul. But no, it's not. Another time, you know, we can explain this. His point here is that his mind. So we say that it's the mind, right, that goes from lifetime to lifetime. But of course, mind is not a thing, right? Mind is more like a series, a process of consciousness, each consciousness lasting only a moment, followed by the next consciousness, by the next, by the next, by the next. And so here, it's the mental continuum, that process. And so that mind meets with the father and the mother. More explicitly, here, the way Buddhists understand conception is saying that when our future father and mother engage in sexual intercourse, given that it's a time where the mother is fertile and the father's sperm is functional, that when the two meets together, this mind, our what he calls the all basis consciousness, latches on to that and says, I. So the beginning of I-ness associated with this body started at conception. So he says, it is during that, when these outer conditions and the inner conditions connect, then a complete human birth is attained. So he says, and as a result of that, I wasn't born in the lower realms. Because in the lower realms, beings are born differently. And so of this, I can be sure. So he's, in a way, rejoicing at the fact that a human birth has been obtained. Appearances of birth and death arise outside. Revulsion for samsara and faith arise within. So the appearances of birth and death arose externally. So of course, for all of us, that's also true, right? I mean, we see birth and death happening all the time. But do we have the inner cause, the inner arising? So what needs to arise when we observe birth and death? Revulsion towards samsara, right? Which is what I was talking about earlier. Like, you need to see that samsara stinks. Oh, my favorite, samsara sucks. I can have a bumper sticker again. Samsara sucks. So we need to actually see and recognize that this is confused projections. And as long as confused projections are going to continue, there isn't going to be real happiness. So revulsion towards samsara and faith. This is the faith, the confidence, the devotion that I was just talking about. So on the one side, revulsion towards samsara, faith and confidence that I can be free from samsara. Those two have to be there. And then, when the sufferings of samsara, expressed here as birth and death, manifest, as the two connect, sublime and genuine Dharma comes to mind. Then our mind will turn towards the Dharma, which is that which wakes us up. Sublime and genuine Dharma comes to mind. And then, when that happens, I am not ruled by the enemy of near kin. Of merely this, I am sure. Kin, family. He says, I'm not ruled by the enemy of close family. This in part is, of course, cultural. Culturally, family here, relative to Tibetan families, and during Milarepa's time, do not have such a strong hold on us. And so how are we to interpret this line? Right? So this line need not be literally interpreted as you got to get rid of your close family members. So what do you need to get rid of here? What do you need not to be ruled by?
Your attachments.
Your attachments to?
That bond.
That bond. That bond. Again, This is not easy to swallow.
I almost had no bond with my brother, so.
Well, many of us have many reasons, right? Whether we have bonds with this family member or not. Important that it's for the right reasons. So this is not just a bond with family. In his context, family bonds have the greatest control over Milarepa, because that's how his life. The mother was tortured by a resentment towards the uncle and the aunt, and kept feeding, right, anger to Milarepa as he was growing up, and said, you need to avenge this, you need to avenge this, you need to avenge this. And so he did. So in that sense, the mother was the enemy. Not that Milarepa is saying I should hate her. No, Milarepa loved his mother. But what should have been a loving relationship turned into the mother teaching him to commit murder. So what he's saying is, whatever bonds that we have with whoever that causes us to create suffering, we need to not be ruled by those types of bonds. So whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's my duty, we need to be freer from those types of influences. Again, I'm reminded of certain kind of seemingly incomprehensible or paradoxical things found in the New Testament, right? Alongside, honor your father and mother, which is in the Hebrew Bible, which Jesus, as a good Jew, taught that as a rabbi, taught that. But he also taught, he said, I do not come to bring peace, but I have come, to set, right, the child against the parent, the brother against the sister. What was he talking about there? Right? I mean, does he literally mean that? Go up and tear up families? I don't know theologically how that is interpreted, but if we interpret it through sort of the Buddhist interpretation, is saying his role is to stir up business as usual. Because business as usual is what's keeping us trapped in confusion. And so there is a very kind of antinomian, a very kind of non-mainstream stance in these teachings. That at the end of the day, it cannot just be about, having your beautiful home in the suburb with 2.5 kids, 2.4, or whatever that number is, and your 2 vehicles and a good retirement plan and all of that. And actually, at the end of the day, you want that? Well, that can continue. You don't need to do so much of this Dharma stuff. But if you say, bodhicitta is what I aspire to, then there will be disruptions. Again, across all spiritual traditions, they say the same thing. Causes and conditions for meeting the Father Lama arise outside. The prajna that purifies arises within. Prajna here is wisdom. So see, this is really interesting. As the two connect, understanding through trust is born. I've ended all doubts about Dharma. Of merely this, I am sure. This song is Milarepa's declaration of his own experience, but it also serves as a model for those who want to follow him. Not everyone needs to follow him. Not everyone is ready to follow him. Right now, if you ask me, also not ready to follow him. But we can certainly be inspired at least a little bit. That would be very beneficial. So here, it gives us a little bit more to work with, some insight as to what it means to have a Lama, to have a Guru, and to rely on the Guru. So he says, let's work on this backwards. I think we can see some things if we go to the very last sentence. The very last line says, I've ended all doubts about Dharma. Right? So what is the purpose of relying on a Lama? This is the purpose. So that I can end all doubts about Dharma. Just as I've said before, just 20 minutes ago, devotion to the Lama is said to be that key. But that's not the final reason. The final reason is to arrive at ending all doubts about the Dharma, ending all doubts about the way to free ourselves from confusion, the way to put an end to suffering. So that, and for that to happen, what do we need? These two have to connect. Or no, what do we need? Understanding through trust. Understanding that arises via trusting the Lama's instructions. But how does understanding through trust is produced? When two things meet, when two things connect. What are these two things that have to connect? Go back. Wisdom that purifies has to arise within us, and the correct causes and conditions for meeting the Lama has to be there. Meeting the Lama doesn't mean, like just meeting. Because you could spend your whole life with this person who is supposed to be a Lama, but he or she, you don't consider your Guru. Then you're just hanging out with whoever. Right? So some of these causes and conditions is basically the ability to recognize, this person is suited to be my Guru. And that's not easy because Milarepa, before Marpa, had another Guru. It said that Guru also had all the, teachings. And his specialty was in Dzogchen, the great perfection, the Nyingma tradition. But no success for Milarepa. So finally that Guru said to him, we don't have the correct karmic connections. You need to find somebody else. So I think teachers who kind of get disappointed, when students go away, basically they don't understand, right? And students who get disappointed because seemingly the teacher doesn't want to teach, basically they don't understand. Yeah? The student's job is to keep requesting for Dharma. That's the student's job. But it's not the teacher's job to say yes, yes, yes. It's the teacher's job to say yes when it is appropriate and no when it is not appropriate. Doesn't mean the student then say, oh, I'm not going to ask anymore because he has said no to me 7 times. No, the student's job is to keep asking, keep requesting. And it's not like wearing it down, you know, like I will wear him down until he gives it. But rather with devotion and trust. Yeah, and to say, please give me the appropriate teachings. Don't say, give me this, 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 and that. I don't want this, 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 and over that. But I want this, 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 and that. Then you're not relating to that person as guru. You're relating maybe to that person as your employee. And of course, in our culture, we didn't used to relate to our college professors that way. But now it's all a business. Yeah, it's all about business. Yeah, and no learning takes place, really. You know, because, I mean, to put it very bluntly, it's blunt, okay? It's like you're having the asylum, the patients of the asylum telling the doctor what to prescribe. You know? Then you say, no, I'm not a mental asylum patient. Well, then leave. No one's forcing you to receive the Dharma. Either you're convinced that you're a mental asylum patient or not. Either you're convinced that I need the guide of a guru or not. If you're convinced, then be ready for what the guru's plan of recovery is. And it cannot be, oh, I want this now, here, this, that. Now, of course, when Marpa probably was relating to someone else who he did not consider to be his student, probably he would say, oh, you want this? Okay, I'll give it to you. Oh, you want this? Oh, I'll give it to you. Because actually Marpa, it seems, also charged money for these teachings. So he wasn't shy to take money because there was a lot of desire during that time. Tibetans really wanted, because this is good stuff coming from India. In the same way, in this materialistic West, people have this attitude to Dharma. This is good stuff. I want it. So we see Marpa sort of giving, you know, okay, you want it? Okay, here, 500 pieces of gold. And there were people who gave it to him. And he said, okay, now I'll give you whatever you want. But we never heard from these people ever again. Right? Because they achieved nothing. They achieved nothing. So with Milarepa, even Marpa's wife could not understand. She said, why are you so cruel to him? With other people, you just give. Marpa said, butt out. You have no understanding of this situation. Then she tried to derail Marpa's, you know, recovery plan. Yeah. But one time it is said that she woke up in the middle of the night and saw Marpa sobbing away. And then she realized that Marpa is in so much pain, giving Milarepa a hard time. Then she stopped. She stopped trying to help Milarepa, knowing that Marpa really cared for Milarepa. And until Milarepa really related to Marpa as guru, whatever Marpa gave would be useless to Milarepa. Useless.
So he didn't want to do all of it, he had to do it.
He had to do. He knew that.
In order for him to get it.
Yeah. So last week I said, you know, I'm pretty confident compared to Milarepa, all of us in this room have way more information about the Dharma than Milarepa ever got. But because of Milarepa's devotion to Marpa, He didn't need all that information. Whatever little Marpa gave Milarepa, it actually produced results. Us, we're still running around and relating to the teachings like it's capitalism. I give this much to get this much. And if I don't get it, sorry, I need to go somewhere else now. I'm going to shop elsewhere.
That's what I like about this place. No matter what your income is, you give what you can, and if you keep coming, you still get done.
So devotion is what, but how does these two meet together to produce the result of understanding through trust is born? Not just that the Lama is there and available, and this is indeed the Lama that we have, lifetimes of connection with. Not only that, but your own wisdom that is purifying from within. So it does not completely rule out your ability to discern to some degree whether this is the guru or not for you. But wisdom doesn't come from judging mind. Wisdom comes from somewhere else. It's the wisdom that purifies our perception of what's going on. So again, it's calling us to not believe our feelings and our thoughts, our immediate feelings and thoughts that come up, especially when relating to guru or potential guru, to sort of be, sort of watch our own reaction and see where's that reaction coming from. It's a light being shined into one area that we don't want to see, we're embarrassed to see, we are resistant to see, and therefore we are reacting this way or not. See, it's that way that wisdom arises. Then when you actually, so this is not calling for blind faith in someone, that the person just say, do anything ridiculous and you do. It's not that. That your relationship with this person, with this guru or potential guru, has to be in such a way that you pay attention, and if this is indeed the guru that you're looking for, that is right for you, at least for now, trust will be born in you. And you recognize it. Oh, this is what's happening. Then understanding through trust is born. When that happens, all doubts about Dharma, we can put the rest to. Then we put into practice. We put into practice. We don't waste our time arguing, which actually, to tell the truth, that happens a lot. I know people don't think that it's arguing. But it is. It's a subtle form of arguing. Like a teacher will make a statement about something, right? And you know deep down what it means. But then you also know that those words can also be interpreted this other way. Then you say, doesn't that mean da 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 da? You are wasting everybody's time. Right? I mean, just talking for the sake of talking. But that's not how we learn Dharma. That might be how you debate in class. But it's just a waste of time. You already know what the obvious take home that statement is about. But no, we want to, but doesn't this standing mean da 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 da? So there is some teacher who says, actually, Zongzai Khyentse Rinpoche, I was told many, many years ago, before he became so famous now, I have friends who attended one of his teachings in California. He comes into the room and he says, okay, ask me a question. You know, people was expecting Dharma talk. He said, ask me a question. Everyone's like, And he said, but this question cannot be a pre-packaged Buddhist question. What is suffering? You know, he says, none of that bullshit. Ask me a real question about Dharma as it relates to your life. Don't give me all this, you know, like, can you explain emptiness? It's like, no, I want a Dharma question that really means something to you. And then he took his watch and he said, 1 minute. If no question, I'm leaving. Then his stopwatch starts tick, 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 and he says, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. And then somebody raises a hand and asks, and he's like, good. Then he answers the question. He gives the answer. And then after that, he says, ask me another question. Now 45 seconds. And the friends that were there, they said it was electrifying because no more bullshit questions, hypothetical questions, questions that have nothing to do with really taking Dharma to heart, which is what often happens. A little bit of that is fine, but if you continuously just doing that, then we're wasting everybody's time. But of course, with teachers like him, you know, they are real teachers. They have thrown aside the 8 worldly concerns. They say, what? I become unpopular? Sure, so be it. People stop liking me? So be it. Who cares? That's hard. I know, you know, one of the first things when I graduated and was going to be a teacher teaching at college, you know, my advisor and some other senior colleagues, you know, would say to me, the first thing, especially for a young professor, you know, it's like the first thing you need to understand is you're not here to become friends with them. You can become friends in the process of you doing your job. But if you try to become friends, you will fail in doing your job. And this is not your job to be friends. Same, you know, here. You have to throw away the 8 worldly concerns.
Same with the parents. Same with parents. It's not their job to be friends with their kids.
Correct.
My dad always wanted to be friends with his kids.
Mm-hmm. And that, you know, creates, you know, confusion.
Yeah.
Boundaries, you know, become really confused and nobody knows how to act. And it's just a total waste of time on everyone's parts, you know, when boundaries are unclear.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, I knew enough I knew how to behave anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep it short.
Next verse, we won't be able to finish this whole song, but let's look at least the next part. Beings of the 6 realms arise outside, unbiased compassion arises within. As the two connect, meditative experience comes to mind. I've kept compassion from ambition's domain. Of merely this, I am sure. It's interesting, right? I've kept compassion from ambition's domain. What do you think that is talking about? How? Why does he have to worry about this? Or why does he even have to say that he's now free of that?
Seems to me it's like this sense of not needing to fix anybody. Like an ambition to change somebody.
Yes. Yeah. To fix anybody. Sometimes we think compassion means, right, everybody becomes my personal project. And when they succeed, yes! When they fail, oh, it's not compassion. Right? Ambition's project domain. It also is telling us that Dharma practice should not be for success, ambition.
There was an article in Lion's Roar recently about that, like a Buddhist teacher who was really angry that Buddhists weren't responding the way he would have liked to the newly elected president.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll leave it at that. You can read it if you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Maybe you should. Yeah, okay, that was you.
Yeah. Lion's Roar.
Lion's Roar.
Oh, like,
Yeah.
I've kept compassion from ambition's domain. Yeah, because even compassion can turn into this win and lose thing that we are always caught up in. Winning and losing and winning and losing, you know? And so we need to protect it from there. And to do that, we need to have meditative experience arise in our mind. But what sort of meditation? There are many, many types of meditation, and they can be very helpful. But the core meditation that we need to do, Milarepa says, is unbiased compassion, arising from within us towards who? Towards beings of the six realms on the outside. All beings of the six realms. So don't chase after meditative experiences. That is this type or that type. Seeing deities, feeling blissful, all those things. But train in unbiased compassion for all. Very hard right now. Very hard, right? Very hard. But necessary. Of merely this I am sure. So next Sunday, we will continue with this song, the last 3 verses, and then maybe do 6 words that sum it all up. If you have this text, just read over them, even read ahead. Then you'll get a sense to anticipate what's coming. Another thing that we want to kind of work on is, again, try to remember. We have taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We have generated bodhicitta. It has to mean something. Something has to be different. So let's look at the dedication from the Milarepa text, since we're still framing our teaching and learning within the context of this practice text. Let me look for it. Even just quickly from page 40, I will just read. This is called Receiving 4 Empowerments. Remember, Milarepa is in the space, at least kind of structurally, thinking of Milarepa in the space in front of us, but we also know actually it's in our minds. But then from Milarepa, we receive the 4 empowerments in the crown center, throat center, heart center, navel center. receiving empowerment from Milarepa. So I will read this, and you can just think about it as I'm reading, and receive the 4 empowerments that way. May our minds be ripened and liberated by the cotton-clad Venerable One and the assembly of deities of the 3 roots. As we thus supplicate, the retinue around Milarepa dissolves into Milarepa, and from him, white, red, blue, and yellow rays of light emanate, which then dissolve into our 4 places. And we thus receive the 4 empowerments. These 4 empowerments purifies the 4 obscurations of body, speech, and mind, and the most subtle obscurations. And in doing so, we will attain the 4 kayas, the 4 bodies of Buddhists. Thereafter, the Venerable Milarepa melts into light and dissolves completely into you. In this very state of great indivisible equality, all that appears and exists is Mahamudra. Emaho, how wonderful. So together, let's do dedication on 41 and 42. Just continuing on. As the conquerors and their heirs dedicated the virtues accumulated in the 3 times and the innately present virtue, I do follow in their steps and dedicate these virtues as means for attaining the great non-abiding awakening. In the clear sky of Dharma Dhatu, may the bondage of all migratory beings, the snake's knot of ego fixation, unravel itself and attain the non-mentation innate co-emergence, the level of Dharmakaya Vajradhara. May Lord Mila, the embodiment of the compassion of all conquerors, be my guru throughout all of my lifetimes. May I pacify the obstacles in the supreme and ordinary paths, and from within the state of luminosity, may I liberate migratory beings. And that's it for today. Thank you for coming. I am quite aware that there are many other possible things that we could be doing, but due to our past karma, here we are.
Okay, so thank you.